Great. So, hello everybody. We are at Reporter 24, a special edition with our project Science Plus. You know that we are part of this big project with publications from other 6 Eastern European countries. This is a premiere for our show. For the first time since we started, we have a guest from abroad. It's Mr. Piotr Toczyski. He is a psychologist and sociologist with a scientific background in educational science and pedagogy, mental health expert. He's from Poland. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Good to see you. Hello.
So our discussion will have this theme, the similarity between COVID disinformation and war disinformation. I was thinking to speak about Romania with some examples, but I understood that this is something that is happening around all Eastern Europe. So maybe you can give us some examples from Poland, if the case, or something that you heard. So just to do an introduction, the bitter conclusion in Romania is that after the 2 years of the COVID pandemic, the population is still vulnerable to disinformation, different type of propaganda and conspiracy theories. What continues to happen since the start of the war in Ukraine is a mirror image of the first months of the COVID pandemic in Romania. We see that the same people in some so-called news outlets which denied the existence of COVID virus now say that the events in Ukraine are not that dramatic, that Russian aggression is just, or even they deny the existence of the war, saying that the Ukrainians are staging everything. Also, there were some hysterical behaviors nationwide here in Romania a few weeks after the first day of war, behaviors that were seen at the outbreak of COVID. We are talking about the shopping spree for elementary food and queuing at gas stations. In this last case, everything escalated after a picture shared through WhatsApp app, which showed the race of gasoline price. So we can see a pattern of psychological behavior in Romania during crisis. Romanians are prey to disinformation, to fake news and propaganda. So the first question would be, why is there this impulse to first believe disinformation?
So disinformation and misinformation are something that belongs to the broad category of mythical and magical thinking. And each of us, every person, every human being is somehow susceptible and vulnerable to this kind of thinking. We need it. For example, we cannot process every information that comes in detail. If we wanted to do that, we would need to have like 10 brains instead of 1 brain, and we have only 1. So we have to look for shortcuts. We really need this kind of thinking. The stereotypes, the short heuristics, we really need it to function. The problem is when we base some crucial life decisions or some very important life decisions on this kind of thinking, which is very much emotional, because that's exactly where we should be rational. So this kind of functions that we have starts being dysfunctional for us, and this is the case of COVID pandemic and war behavior. This kind of situations, like geopolitical problems coming so close to us, and public global health problems coming so close to us, those are the problems where we should be fully rational. That's where we need rationality or even hyper rationality to make good decisions. And that's not the case. We, I mean the Eastern European societies, are very much affected by propaganda, disinformation. Also, because of our systems of education, we are somehow susceptible to misinformation. That means no one has to propagate any theory or any conspiracy. We are just misinformed because we don't have information skills. We are not very well educated in information related behavior, in so-called digital information skills. So it looks as if we are helpless, and the information ecosystem around us is very complicated and very dangerous. And we behave like babies in the jungle.
Yeah.
So if you know Rudyard Kipling and the book of jungle, you should know that we need some curators, we need some friendships, we need some mentors, yes? And that's something we can begin with.
So the first step is to obtain this mentorship, if you will. But how can normal people, which are not connected to news, to latest information, how they can obtain these skills so that when they receive propaganda, they would be less susceptible to it?
Yes. So the first thing, when you go to the journalism class, when you are, let's say, 15, and you start producing your own school newspaper, is teaching you distinguishing between fact and opinion. And fact, it's usually connected to those questions starting with why, like what, where, when, who, why, what for, with what resources, and so on. So first thing would be that every one of us should behave like a journalist. We should start learning this. In Central Europe and Eastern Europe, we didn't have much journalistic classes. It was always like something extracurricular, that you can learn it if you like after school. Of course, who wants to learn anything after school, yes? So if we don't have in schools journalism, if we don't have those basics of journalism, of digital content production, of understanding the content flow, we will have to somehow learn it later in our lives. Let's say we are 40 or 45 and we want to upgrade our information skills. We want to be better in information. What can we do? We can go back to the basics, take the book for journalism, like for 15 years old, and just read it. If I wanted to learn advanced biology currently, and I don't know anything about advanced biology, I don't know much about development of even geophysics or astronomy. I don't know much about advanced mathematics. If I really wanted to learn it, I would have to start with the book for kids. I would really have to take this book and read it, spend one afternoon reading about some basics, and I guarantee that it will be enough as a vaccination. It will be vaccination against disinformation. Apologies for my dog.
He wants to be in part of our discussion.
Yes, he really wants to be part of the international discussions. So that's really something we can begin with, like search for in every European country. There are some books about journalism written for kids. I remember my first book like this. It was an American book called High School Journalism Course. It was written by Helen Smith. I received it in Budapest in Center for Independent Journalism when I was 15 or 16. It was published by Columbia University, and it was really great. It takes you like one afternoon to read it and to understand everything. All you need is just being open to damage your own prejudices and your own style of thinking about information. Because when you are 40 or 45, you have this feeling, I'm a really wise man. I know everything about life. And what can I learn from the book for children? Yes, actually, you can learn from the book for children and for teenagers. So just take this book and spend one afternoon with this kind of book to get introduced to basic information skills, like how to distinguish facts from opinions, how to fact check, how to check facts. how to do basic fact checking, like how to confront different sources, how to check who actually wrote the term on Wikipedia. You can believe Wikipedia, but check how was this Wikipedia content built exactly, read the discussion. So basically, get familiar with skills. The bad news is that it will cost you. You will pay with your energy, with your brain, with your cognitive resources. You will really pay for this, but that's the only way to get vaccinated against disinformation and misinformation.
So it's a discussion of education, but only you do it at a certain age after you graduate all the schools that are in the life of a person. So would it be useful for everybody, for every citizen, especially in the Eastern Bloc countries, as my country and your country is, for our governments to implement something in the school system? I don't know how it is in Poland, but in Romania, for instance, we have a course of religion, which is from the first grade to the last year of high school. And we don't have other courses that are actually useful during your life. You said about journalism, it would be great, but also we need some courses of health, people to know how to intervene when somebody maybe is choking next to you and you have to do that Heimlich maneuver. So I was documenting for this discussion with you, and I found out that in France, the government invested in creating some courses that school children are being learned to do the difference between disinformation, false informations, and the real information, valid, verified from very verified sources. So we also have a figure that last year over 1 million children participated at these courses. So the question was, would it be useful for maybe the government, the state, to intervene with this kind of measure here, at least in Romania? I was saying that is a great need for this, but what is your expert opinion?
If I were the Minister of Education in any European country currently, I would actually keep religion. Why not? Religious studies may be important if there are really the studies of religion, not just, listening to it without any basic criticism. But I would also, I would say, I would double the hours spent on religion, on journalism and digital skills. So I would say, if you have 1 hour of religion, why don't you have 2 hours of information skills? Why? Because religious thing is only once a week usually. If you are really the practicing and very involved religious person, you go to your temple once a week usually. But if you are somehow immersed in information, misinformation, disinformation, and so on, it happens to you every hour, I would say, because currently we are always on. We always have our, smartphones with us, yes? We have always our information flow directed towards us. So what we need is to get information how to navigate in this ocean of information, and we would need it at least 2 hours a week, I would say. So if we have 2 hours of religion, I would say we need 4 hours of information skills. And actually, information skills will be very useful, not only for everyday life, but also for our scientific education. Because if we want to become scientists, we need great information skills, I would say top of the top. And for consumption and for production, we always need those skills. I would also say that at least half of time should be spent on media production, because you can only learn how to consume media by producing the media. So children and young people in schools, they actually should start learning media production in practice. They should set up their own newspapers, learn editorial skills, learn information checking skills. and it should be all within the curriculum. And I would do that without hesitation if I were any kind of Minister of Education currently in Europe, because it's a very alerting situation. What I would also suggest is that this journalist skills, they should cover very specialistic journalism, not only writing about basic facts, but also getting into some complicated things, like meeting the scientist, discussing with the real true scientist for 1 or 2 hours, but first getting prepared. Our great journalist Kapuściński, he said that you can actually get immersed, but other great journalist Skalski said that you should sit and write without thinking, without hesitation. But even he said you need to read 10 pages for every 1 page you write, and another one said you have to read 100 pages for every 1 page that you want to write. So children should learn those skills. They should learn how to get prepared, how to confront different parts of information, and how to produce them themselves. In this way, they would be informationally fluent, like their information skills would be top of the top, and they would be actually some mentors for their parents, grandparents, neighbors, and so on. Because when it comes to digital world, very often children and teenagers are mentors. So they would say, look, father, what you say is not supported by evidence. It's not evidence-based. We know it from school. Believe me, I'm an expert, because I know how to open, Skype or Zoom, or how to be fluent on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, for which your access is, you're usually digitally excluded when you get older, yes? So yes. I'm digitally apt, and I can help you with information ecosystem. So that's utopian. I know it sounds somewhat utopian, but we have to start dreaming about something to get it done, yes?
So going back to the pandemic era, it hasn't passed the virus, but the cases are fewer and fewer around the world. But there was a time when specialists were disbelieved. People weren't taking what for good what specialists were saying. At least here in Romania, what's your take on this? What was the mistake that doctors or health specialists made, so that, for instance, in Romania, when the vaccine came out, we are now probably the less vaccinated country against COVID in Europe, with about less than 30% of the population. So you were saying about the media education, and also that experts have to learn how to communicate. Was this a first mistake in maybe the first pandemic of mankind at this scale?
So, and when it came to saying about the virus itself, in let's say the beginning of 2020, yes, when all those information started appearing, we were disoriented. We were very much emotionally strong, affected by the news. When we are so much in emotions, our cognitive functions stop searching for the best. They search for anything, like let's solve the problem quickly, like give me some points of reference. And of course, magical and mythical content comes first. So the first information that were coming were idealized information about, like, drink some herbs or breathe deeply, and that will change the situation around you. The problem is that when you want to do some intervention for public health, you have to remember that people are so magically and mythically thinking. That means that you have to use the same tools. So they should use advertising, social advertising, like social marketing tools to persuade people quickly, but they didn't have time and power to do that. And the first landing pages should be those based by World Health Organization and so on. It took some time for media giants like Facebook, YouTube, Google to introduce those disclaimers like, look, this information may not be so true and so on. So people without information skill, emotionally aroused, within the flow of information, the ocean of information that is unverified, they were helpless. I use this metaphor of the child in the jungle. So they were like the children in the jungle.
Yes.
They didn't have mentors. They didn't have curators with them. They didn't have any goodwill animals around them who would be helpful. Yes, and
yes,
that was the real problem. And what could the public health services do? They should and could communicate, with people, to use some communication skills which they clearly didn't have. Now we know that we really need to have communicators around us. That's basically why Science Plus program is so strongly developing currently, and other programs like this. But at that point, the authorities were helpless. Also, the authorities are very often somehow using the propaganda. In every country, even most democratic country, authorities use propaganda from time to time because of political fight and because of the political power struggle. So they are not that much interested in teaching journalism skills to everyone and critical thinking to everyone, because they also need our emotional and conspiracy thinking when it comes to election. So it's not in their best interest. But when it comes to pandemic or war, we actually need those critical thinking skills. And that's the wheel of misunderstandings. That's not in their best interest, that's the paradoxicality, but they really need to invest in it. Of course, it may mean the end of their power, because if we were all super rational, most probably we would have other people ruling us, like technical governments, not political governments.
Yeah. Experts.
Yes.
Well, now with the war, are we still children in the jungle regarding the hybrid war, the informational war? We are repeating we are seeing the same situation as I was saying at the beginning of our discussion.
Yes, indeed. But now we are somehow vaccinated against disinformation, because we had this anti-vaccine movement, like health related information that was not evidence-based. We had all those discussions for 2 years, and actually it somehow strengthened us and gave us some power. It empowered us against disinformation and misinformation. So now we are a little bit stronger. I would say we are not best of the best yet. We are like 20% better than we were. So we cannot go to the Olympic Games, but we can go to some amateur game and not get damaged in in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Or in 10 minutes. We can play this game like as a consumers of information, or maybe the prosumers of information, because the information requires not only consumption and not only production skills, but also some prosumption skills, like fact checking, like discussing with information brokers. So now we know more about it, and we have some curators around us. Like we have curators such as Google and Facebook, because they are not that helpless and not that anti-humane in their actions as they were 2 years ago. They learned something. They learned the lesson too. The regulators around them started saying about their great role in information ecosystem. So now we are in a bit different place than we were, but we cannot stop. Like, we really need to develop critical thinking and information skills until we all can go to Olympic Games and get at least the opportunity to start in the game. We don't have to be masters of the masters and champions above other champions, but we at least need to be able to get into the game. So I would say that's a long way.
You were saying, and we were discussing about how social media giants, big tech, changed because of the situation regarding COVID. But what are your takes on the press, the media in general, during COVID and until now with the war? Were there some disinformation that came through the conventional media channels with intent or not? And on our final minutes of the discussion, I would like to speak about this. So please.
So mainstream media, they keep standards more often than digital media, but of course digital media converge with old school journalism currently. So in digital media you can find more and more professional content, more and more professional journalism, like behavior according to the standard, fact-checking, and great responsibility for information. You can find more and more of it. In the mainstream media, I would say that the cycle of experiential learning came. The cycle is started with experience of difficulty. So at first it was very difficult for them, but later they reflected on it somehow. They built some new standards and started applying them for the information regarding COVID, let's say. Like, they knew that the governments were hiding some information or not presenting statistics correctly because they had their political interest in it. So they reached out to experts, started discussing with true experts. Then governments were forced to employ the really like epidemiologists, those who are the experts. The number skills of media, like analyzing statistics and analyzing numbers, understanding what's hiding behind the numbers, increased, and the fact-checking skills increased, and they started being more powerful. And I would say that their role changed, and especially when they behave according to international standards. So those media that are parts of international associations, like there are some associations of leading European newspapers, or the associations of international digital media, or those behaving according to international advertising bureau standards. All those media outlets can be trusted because they do much to deserve our trust. And I would say that what we may pay attention to is how are those media labeled. Are they labeled like as the trusted media because they behave according to the standards? Are their journalists getting some professional awards and recognition? That's also part of information skills. Like, do we trust the information broker? And it seems that in old school media, we will find more standards that we can then compare with the new media. So as far as we can rely on many bloggers and journalists, we still can confront it with the old media. So maybe we actually don't take the paper media that much in our hands as we did, or we don't listen that much to the radio or watch television in the generation like 30s, 40s, those who are digital natives currently, and younger, of course, but they can find those content on digital media. What I would say is that it would be good to inspire young people, those who are immersed in TikTok, immersed in Instagram, to get some links with old media which converged with new media. Like in Poland, we have some great newspapers and we can trust them. And it would be good to have their presence on Instagram and TikTok in a very strong way. It would be also great to see like some people, some influencers reading the newspaper. I didn't see this kind of campaign, but it would be really great to see the influencer reading the newspaper and saying, look, I rely on this newspaper because those journalists are awarded. They are really awarded. They are professionally recognized. They are internationally well known, and they behave according to the standards, which are international standards. They get Pulitzer, let's say. Of course, very often you cannot expect Pulitzer for local European newspapers, but there are some regional Pulitzer. In Poland, we have this great Grand Press award. So any Grand Press is like kind of the certificate of recognition that you can trust this journalist if he received it in the past. So of course that's what we currently need, and I would say that this experience, the cycle of experience based on experience, reflection, knowledge and application of knowledge is something that some media learn. So choose the media that learn. Don't choose the media that don't learn, or that come with ready message, like we are here to propagate one or two ideas which come out of our agenda, which is inspired by, let's say, some diplomats, or is inspired by some environment or anti mainstream movement, and that's always your choice. You can always choose if you go left or go right, or choose something in the middle, and all it requires is your cognition, your cognitive skills. So you pay with the glucose you eat, you feed your brain, and you pay with glucose for being cognitively like in cognitive effort. But you have to really spend some of your resources, of your brain resources, to move forward with information skills.
Great. It's been a great discussion. We almost made it in the time that we wanted to allow for our discussion. Thank you for your presence and your effort to share your knowledge with us. I just want to say that our campaign with Science Plus continues, and we are asking our viewers to stay on reporter24.info and our other outlets on social media and so on, so that you may find out what we are writing, and so that you would get in contact and see the things that specialists as yourself are saying. So I'm gonna stop our recording, and till next time, I'm Ionuș Jivcu. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.